Just make sure we're good. Setting up our webinar for Facebook Live. Here we go. Okay, I think we're live. I'm just going to quickly double check on here and make sure, and we'll get started. Hi, everybody. If anyone's joined us already, yeah, we are officially live. Okay, so we've got 1 minute until we officially begin, so we'll hang tight. But how are you enjoying this gorgeous sunshine today, ladies?
Loving it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's such an extreme, right? 2 weeks ago there was snow, and now it's summer. I kind of feel like we need that spring weather. I saw some really cute outfits I haven't had a chance to wear to the grocery store because where else am I going?
True. Yeah, I know it's been great. We have a pool that we opened up, but then of course when they opened it, they messed it up, and it's a saltwater pool, and they forgot to actually turn on the salt, so there's no green. So we were enjoying it Saturday, Sunday, and all of a sudden we're like, why is it looking so green? And so yesterday I was dying. I wanted to get in there so bad, but it's still not quite right. So probably needs one more day, and we'll be back in business. So
yeah.
Well, we're 1 o'clock, so I just wanted to welcome Janet and Francine. Now, do you go by Fran or Francine?
Janet calls me Fran. It doesn't matter.
All right, I'll stick with Francine then. It's funny, Janet and I actually met each other probably almost 2 years ago, I guess, right? National Women's Show. You came up to the booth, and you do a lot of writing for Savvy Sassy Moms, and you live in Whitby, and I'm in Whitby, so we sort of formed the connection there. And Janet and Francine are both owners of the company called Finding Solutions, and Finding Solutions is what do you do? Behaviour consultation, parent coaching, workshops, trainings, community support, tons of resources you guys offer, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I thought I'd have them on here today and ask some of the questions that you guys have shared with me about sort of being home, stuck with your families in close quarters for the last little while. And it was announced, obviously, that the kids are not going back to school. And so we thought they'd open it up to question and answer. So Janet, you have 2 boys. How old are your boys?
I have a 15-year-old who's in grade 10, and I have a 10-year-old boy who's in grade 4.
Very good. And Francine, you have 2 children as well.
Yes, I have 2 girls. So one is 9 and one is 13.
Wow. And then I have at home with us right now, 5-year-old girl and a 12-year-old girl at home with us right now. And then 3 more that are gone. Okay, so we'll get started. So these are the questions sort of that came through. But before, did you guys want to share anything more that I didn't go over before the introduction?
No, I think, we're all in this same thing together, and the expectation, I think, at the beginning was, how are we all going to manage this? How can we manage work? How can we manage this remote learning? And as we've eased into this, and it's sort of becoming a new norm for everyone, I think a lot more people have settled in. So there still may be some struggles, and I think coming together to talk about what some of those struggles still may be and different tips that we can share with you. Regardless, we just want, and so do educators, for everyone to do their best, right?
Right.
The best of your ability. And teachers are reporting that they'll catch up in September, October, whatever that's going to look like. That's where that catch-up period will be. So, yeah.
Great.
I just want everyone to keep in mind that as much as we're, concerned for our children and we're there to support our children, that this whole situation is new for all of us. As we parent, we're parenting usually based on experience. And this is something that we as adults have not experienced before. So we're all kind of working through this together. Children, adults, the elderly, that this is all, we're all in this together, and this is all new for all of us.
Yeah, I think that's great, because I've seen that a lot, even in which the one great thing about social media is the fact that we are able to share, share what's working, share what's not, share when we need help, we can put our hands up. So I found that really fascinating during this, because you're absolutely right, Francine. Like, none of us have been here before, none of us.
Yeah, there's definitely no experts right now. Even Francine and I will call one another to ask questions about our own children, or maybe some of the children that we're supporting remotely. And it's like, okay, I haven't had this before. What would you do? Or, I need a mental health day. I need to take 2 walks around the block today. So it's knowing that we're all struggling in different ways. So as Fran said, we're sort of going by the seat of our pants and pulling from different things that we know have worked in the past and can be applied to the situation, with perhaps making some tweaks along the way.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll get started. So the first question came through, and Jen, I'll pose this one to you, I guess. How can you motivate kids to do their schoolwork? And I know for me, I was off to a pretty good start, but as it went on and went on, I found it more challenging. I actually preferred it when it wasn't so structured and when it wasn't the actual, distance learning for myself. When we were setting it up, I found it easier and there was less tears or less attitude. But as it's gone on, man, it's been tough for sure.
Absolutely. And, when we look at the remote online learning, it takes a different set of skill sets that some students haven't fully developed yet, right? Certain skills may be lagging or just haven't had the experience of working online. And as a parent, you might be saying, wait a second, my child can spend 5 hours on video games on a Saturday. You're telling me they can't stay online on a computer? But it's really tapping into different skills. If we think about the learning style of some students, they can have a difficult time managing with what we call executive functioning skills. So that motivation is really important. And I think as parents, I know I've been validating and reassuring my children first and foremost that it's even hard for me to maintain motivation to do work. So, some families are setting up motivation or like token systems with their children, printing off a class schedule, having their kids, do little check marks, making sure you're setting in those mini movement breaks throughout the day and working towards a larger goal or a reward, and, asking your children for their input. So, do you want to walk to, let's say, the ice cream store if that's open, or I know the dollar store is still open. So building in some type of reward. I think for many parents, it's maybe how do you manage that motivation for children who are older. So I know both Fran and I have, teens. And for the most part, I have to say pretty impressed. But even with, my teen, it's at times it's doing those gentle reminders, trying not to seem like that nagging mom. Some families I've spoken to, and they've had to set up a behavior contract. Not necessarily ideal, but it's working for that family to do that. So, and I think allowing your kids just to have a mental health day. So saying, you know what, today I'm going to email your teacher and just say, you need a break.
Yeah, I saw someone that said, oh, it's a snow day today, kids.
Oh, I love it.
And I think we have to think outside the box. And I know a lot of educators are doing that. So try and think of a more fun or creative way to do those lessons. So if a teacher has something that needs to be printed and it's, getting back to that writing. And if that's one of your child's, areas of challenge, then you do the writing for them.
Right.
Right. So it's really important to identify the strengths and needs of your child and try and weave that into the learning right now.
And I think it's okay to change things up a little. So for example, if your child is working on measurement and your teacher may be sending you various worksheets to work on, take it to the next level and apply it to, bake a cake. And so you're doing measuring as you're baking. So I know there's a lot of teachers who are working closely with parents. Parents are saying, my child cannot sit online for this amount of time, but I still want them to learn. And so teachers are giving parents examples of how to make it applicable and take it to the next level. So now you're doing a 3D shapes nature hunt, scavenger hunt. So there are a lot of really creative ways to make it fun for children and to build that motivation piece in.
I think also changing the setting. So for, I know my son in grade 4, he, of course, as you said, the novelty of, oh, I get to learn online and use my computer and stay in my room. Then it was, oh, I don't want to work in my room. So it's like, okay, well, today maybe for a portion of the day you can work on your bed. So we have to be careful that it doesn't become too relaxed. I was running a session with a class yesterday, and that gorgeous day, and I can't tell you how many students were sitting on their trampolines outside. So take that outdoor, have an outdoor day, right? So again, that's going to help keep children motivated, especially for those who need those more movement breaks to change the setting. I know I've worked on my couch too a couple of times, right?
No, that's helpful too. And I think the weather just hasn't been where we are anywhere on Ontario, hasn't been that cooperative the last little while. So this has been great and has been so helpful getting the kids to actually go outside because it just naturally happens, some of the learning on its own. So it's good. Yeah.
One tip that, I know Francine and I have suggested to families, it's hard to remember to praise and reward and reinforce your kids, right? It's sort of when they're being good, we're like, oh, thank goodness I can get, my work done. They're doing their work. We're assuming it's quiet, right? But don't discount the power of positivity. And if you need to set a timer for yourself, so every 5 to 10 minutes that timer goes off and you can quickly pop in and give a little bit of attention and kiss them, reward them, whatever it is. For some families, I say wear 10 elastic bands on one wrist. And then you have 10 times throughout that school day to take one off and go and reinforce, right? So you can be creative even with your reinforcement systems, whether that's to keep yourself on track as well as for your children.
Yeah, that's a great one because accountability is huge and primarily for us sometimes. You're absolutely right. Okay, good. All right, next question we have here is how do you keep a routine when everyone's routine is so disrupted right now? So you touched on that a little bit. Any other tips for that?
It's, routine's more essential than ever right now, to be honest with you. And we just have to look at how we can change the routine a little bit and develop a new routine for our students. Our children are used to a structured environment. They're at school all day and it is structured. And so that's what they're used to. And they're not used to having to occupy their time for hours at a time every day. So if we can build in that routine for them, it will reduce stress, it will reduce behavior issues, and will create that balance that we need in our everyday lives. So I often will say to parents, think about your child's day at school. When they were at school, what were some of the activities that they were doing? And is there any way we can create that at home, basically? So if you think of a typical elementary school day, it will have things like, it will have the academics, obviously. So it'll have, the math and the language and the science, but it will also have music. They have gym, they have art, they have recess where they have that social time. They have library time where they have, quiet reading. So we want to implement those sorts of things throughout the day. And, I know my kids will say to me, oh, I'm so happy it's day 2 today, or, oh, it's day 5. Well, what is it about those days that are so motivating? As we go back to Janet's question, why do they look forward to certain days? And so we need to find out, is it because they love science? Is it because they have gym or art? And so we can embed those activities in our everyday schedules or everyday routines at home as well. So when we build our routine with our child, and Jen and I always talk about, as we're preparing things for our children, we want our children to be involved in it. So if you're developing a daily routine, get your child to sit with you and work out this routine together so they can see, oh, it's not all language. Oh, I'm going to get to go outside and ride my bike. Oh, I'm going to get to do a painting today. And so
more buy-in too, right, from them if you get them involved. Absolutely, that's great.
That's absolutely. Yeah. So it's just redefining the routine to now emulate what's happening at home and what materials you have available. Gym's going to look different. Gym may be taking a ride around the block. You know, it may be jumping on the trampoline, but this is where we have to be creative. The last thing is that predictability does provide, provides comfort, and it does help define school time versus free time. It divides weekday versus weekend, because when we're at home right now, are you finding yourself like, oh, is it Tuesday?
Totally.
What day is it today?
Totally, yeah.
So we want to make sure weekends reflect weekends. You know, I'm making pancakes. It's Saturday. You know, I'm finished my work, so now I am on free time. Oh, it's school time now. So having that routine is just, it's really helpful, and it helps really guide us.
Yeah, and
Yeah, no, that's it.
Yeah, simple steps. So, you know, one of the things that I always dreaded when my children were younger was having to pack lunches for the next day, right? If there was a hot lunch provided at school, I was on board. I was happy about that. And I know Francine had mentioned that with her daughter, I think she was having her pack the lunch the night before. So I started doing that with my teenager and my younger sons. Like, okay, the night before, let's pack a little lunch. The teenager was a little more, okay, mom, really, I'm going to make my lunch that day. But for my son in grade 4, that was really motivating. So he'd get his little, especially in the beginning, right? He got his lunch pack. He helped me pack his lunch, what he wanted, and also for me. Right, so I knew what I was going to eat. So you have to think about yourself. If you're one of those individuals who were so used to, you know, going to a restaurant, going to takeout, you know, maybe start planning your meals the night before your lunch. And if possible, can you sit down as a family at lunchtime? I know that's something that's been really nice that we've been trying to incorporate more in our house, is having those lunchtime and those dinner time meals to talk about how things are going. And do we need to switch anything up?
That's a great
tip. A lot of parents
have
been kind of complaining to me. Their children were eating them out of house and home. Every 2 minutes was snack time. You know, granola bar, the popsicle, so it's just a nice way of sort of regulating that a bit.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, next question. With everybody home and all the stress people are feeling, is it a good time to start to relax the rules with how many weeks left before summer's actually here?
So again, it's sort of like the routine. Like, children really thrive on stability and structure. Like, if you ask them, they would say, no, I want free time. But in reality, I know a lot of parents have been talking about lots of tears. You know, it's different for them. And that, you know, Jen and I worked for a psychologist, and he used this phrase a lot with us, and I implement it in everything I do. He talked about structured flexibility, and that, you know, we need to have rules to guide us. We need to have routine, but we need to have some flexibility within, you know, the rules and the routine. And so the rules may change. Some are going to stay the same and some are going to change. Well, you think about, can you have a play date and have your friends come over and hang out? No, because the rules have changed. Can I still socialize? Absolutely, but it's going to look different. So it's a great time to sort of sit down, either one-on-one with your child or as a family, and kind of talk about some of the rules that remain the same and some that are going to be a bit different. Talk about the expectations and the consequences. But we want to build in that flexibility as well. And so Janet talked about, you know, working at your desk versus working in the backyard, talking about what's negotiable and non-negotiable. So it may be negotiable. Do I have to write it or do I have to type it? But what's non-negotiable, I know actually Janet has this rule because her son texts or messages my daughter almost every day. And we have the same rule. The rule is you have to finish your schoolwork before you can socialize. So we get buzzes throughout the day. Hi, are you done your work yet? Not yet, I'll call you back.
Yeah.
So that's a rule that's not negotiable. And I love it because they keep each other in check. Have you done your work yet? Because I want to talk to you. So it's important to still have those rules, but it's, again, that flexibility within those rules.
And I think for some families, you know, Francine and I are big on visuals, right? So whether you are printing these off, you're making a large poster, and you have the family rules. And I love charts, so you can do, this is negotiable, this is non-negotiable, and even young children will learn what those terms mean. And then there's also a section for consequences, both positive and negative. So when you follow these rules, these are all the wonderful things that can happen. And when you forget, these are also the consequences. And I think for some rules, you're just going to learn as you go. So for example, this whole phone texting back and forth, you know, it did come to a point where I had to say to my son, you can't have, you know, that device in your room because I know that it's distracting you. So it's going to stay in the kitchen. And when you come down at lunchtime, that's when you're allowed to do that. So for some of us, we've had to make up rules that never existed before because of the situation that we are in. But I think for older students, having their input into the rules are going to have more buy-in then if they're more willing, and posting them for sure. It helps people on track too, right?
That flexibility piece, especially with your older children, things like, you know, we want to keep relatively stable bedtimes because we just know eating, sleeping, all those things contribute to our mental health, our wellness. But you know, I will let them stay up a little later because they're not having to wait for the bus. They don't have to walk to school. There is some flexibility. So can they stay up an hour later? Have they completed all their work? Sure. So this is where the rules can be a little bit more flexible.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, it's funny that you mentioned that because I was talking with a parent yesterday, and this is a parent who's very much like me in terms of a lot of structure, being very organized, very routine. And you know, I have a lot of what I call my pet peeves, and I've had to do a lot of self-reflection, and I think this is an important time for families to do that and to let things go. So for example, I was a stickler for that bed needed to be made before you left for school. Well, it started to slide a little bit with my teenager, and then it was, okay, then only on the weekends, so long as you make your bed on the weekends. Well, now even though I cringe at times, that's a rule that I've been able to relax on and say, you know what, so long as you help me change the sheets once a week, I'm letting the bed go. But what's not negotiable is the garbage, you know, the food, the dishes. At the end of the night, that needs to come down. So I think it's, you know, for me anyway, I'm learning a lot about my own control issues. I need to let go as a parent. You know,
that feels familiar. I would say the same thing. Like a 5-year-old loves Lego, and normally it's like, okay, when you're done, put everything back in. Well, our basement looks like a Lego landmine right now. It's like everywhere. But they just go down, and they're just constantly loving to play. So it's actually easier in the long run, even though it looks. Yeah, it gets my anxiety.
Your app can come into play, right? Your app
is
really important at this time to help kids realize what are the chores that they need to do, what's necessary, what's not.
Yeah, we actually bent a lot of the expectations because it is very different living here with these new conditions, right? We absolutely became flexible with the app and took a lot of things off that were no longer expectations because it just didn't work out based on the dynamics that we're living in today. Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, and people need to feel okay about that.
Yeah. Good. Okay. I think we have one more question left. A couple more come through. So what about children who have required additional support in the classroom? What do you suggest?
Right. So, you know, there are a lot of children who have those exceptional needs. And if they were in school, they would have that IEP, that individual education plan that perhaps had the accommodations and modifications. And I've had parents where I've referred them to say, you know, go back to your educators, go back to the special education resource teacher, the principal, the teacher, and look to see how those accommodations or modifications can be applied right now it's sort of like this online learning started, and that for some children went, forgotten. It was forgotten about. So I would say go back, review that IEP, because now, unfortunately, as a parent, you may have to implement some of those accommodations if your child's teacher is able to set that up. So don't be afraid to ask for help in that regard. If you've had additional support, let's say from an occupational therapist, get in contact with them. Maybe they have some ideas or things around the house that you can use. I know for my younger son, he had one of these special bands that went around his chair so he could kick while he was sitting and doing his work, because he always tends to move around. And I ran to my basement and realized I had one of those exercise bands. I thought, perfect, okay, let's switch out the chair that's in your bedroom. We'll bring in the kitchen chair. We'll put the exercise band. And then within a few days, he started to regulate himself. And he said, I actually want to sit on my bouncy ball. Great. So instead of a chair, sit on your bouncy ball. You can blow up like a beach ball just slightly, and the child can sit on that and for a wiggle cushion, because a lot of families, their children have a lot of the OT supports, but guess where they are? At school. So you may not have those things available at home, but check in with different professionals to see, are there things at home that can be used, help supplement that. And this is where, again, really knowing your child's learning style. So there tends to be about 3 main type of learning styles, right? You have a child who tends to be more of a visual learner, or kinesthetic, who require those movement, or auditory. And really sit down and figure out which learning style your child has, and then you can start to make certain accommodations based on their learning need. I know for both myself and my youngest, we have an array of snacks and water bottles readily available for when he is working, because he needs that constant, whether it's a pack of gum or something crunchy, or, so making sure you have some of those things that can help supplement the learning. Yeah.
I know a lot of parents feel the pressure that their children are losing out, and if they don't keep up with all the assignments that are given, they really stress over it. And I know that a lot of teachers are trying to reassure parents that it's okay to break things down. If there are 10 questions, and because there's more of a process, kids are now having to think of the answers, write them down, and then type them. Some of them are typing them up and submitting it. Some of them are taking pictures of their written work. There's a lot more to it than in school. Some of it would have been verbal. They would have just been able to, answer the question verbally. And I think it's a great time to reach out to your teachers, because teachers are now accepting videos. So if you want to send a video about your story or your answer questions verbally, that's an option. And also to break down the task, that you don't have to do all 10 questions, maybe just do 5. And so we frame it as the must-dos versus the can-dos. And teachers will say, we're often giving extra work because there are those children who whiz through things, and parents are asking, I need more work to keep them occupied. But then for other students, it's just super overwhelming. So again, it's you need to really tailor it to the needs of your child and the framework of your household. Yeah. Some parents are often able to assist their children a bit more. Some households, both parents are working full time. So not to beat up ourselves and think that everything has to be complete. And where is the flexibility again in that?
I also think this is a great time for students to build their self-awareness and their self-advocacy. So they're learning a lot of things about themselves in terms of their own learning needs, and having those frank conversations. Well, what was easy about today? What did you find more challenging? Why do you think that's more challenging? One of the things for my son, what we realized was he is a great speaker. So we were using the voice to text instead of him just sitting there and trying to type, right? So it's like, we'll use the voice to text. then copy it, and then paste it into a separate document that your teacher wants. So that self-awareness is absolutely essential because it will only build self-advocacy. And instead of me rushing to solve the problem, I'm encouraging my son to, type his teacher a question through Google Classroom or whatever, different platform teachers are using. So maybe even use that as an opportunity, whether you have a younger child or a child, in high school, start having them become more self-aware so then they can advocate for themselves in some of the things that they need.
That's great. Good segue to your book, ladies. I don't think we talked about your book, did we? Yeah. These ladies are authors, and you can get their book right now. I think you guys have a 5-star review, right, on the Amazon store. Is that where we can find it?
We do.
And so the name of the book again is?
How to Explain a Diagnosis to a Child. It's actually available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble online, and Indigo online.
Great.
And it was available in parent books, but I'm not sure right now in Toronto if they're open or just doing online purchases.
Okay, good. All right, well, we're wrapping up. Anything else? Any other tips or tricks that you can share with our families today before we close off?
I think Francine covered it. Yeah, like go easy on yourself. Relax, have fun.
Let it go. I keep saying that. I've seen
That's
Frozen
right.
times, and that's my thing. Just let it go, let it go. But it's hard. It's been, how many weeks has it been since we've been doing this? It feels like forever.
Well, Francine and I both work in a private school. So when March break happened, we didn't have March break. Our children were on March break, but we were still in full force with schooling for the 2 weeks. So for me, I feel like this has been going on forever.
Yes.
Much longer, than the public school system. So 8, 9, I don't know. I'm losing.
Wow. Yeah. All good.
I would just end with just have some fun, be creative. We did a drive-in movie the other day. We hung a huge sheet on our garage. We got a projector from work, and neighbors sat on their lawns and we watched a movie.
That's great.
We gotta just find fun ways to keep ourselves going.
Yeah. Well, ladies, thank you very much. Janet, Francine, you guys can find them on Finding Solutions if you have any more questions for them, but I really appreciate your time, and get out there and enjoy the sunshine. I don't think it's going anywhere though, so that's good news.
That's great.
All right. Thank you so much, Jody.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Okay, bye.